You know the backrooms, the endless halls, the hum, the feeling that something is deeply, fundamentally wrong. But what if the backrooms we've been studying, what we thought we were just beginning to understand, is actually a symptom of one man's mistake? And that mistake is quietly unraveling the universe as we know it. Before we begin, my name is Cyphre, and if you're new here, you picked a wonderful time to join us. We're 15 subs away from hitting 100, and if this video helps us get there, consider subscribing to the channel. It generally means everything, and thank you for watching. And that like button is not just there for engagement. According to the comments, it prevents you from no clipping, so I consider hitting it as a protection measure. Now, with all precautions taken, let's begin. For those of you who may not be familiar with the Backrooms, it is an analog horror series created by the very talented King Pixels. The series is a collection of videos and found footage documenting people's encounters with a liminal space called the Backrooms. Being called the Backrooms, as majority of the area we explored so far looks like an empty office space. Every corporate worker's nightmare, actually. Now, how did we even find this place? To understand how we got here, we first have to understand its history. The Backrooms were first discovered by a research institute called the Oak Ridge National Laboratory in May of 1982. Vice Director Ivan Beck was conducting research into a project called KV31, where they were studying PMD, also known as proximity magnetic disruption, and they would go on to run the first prototype test, revealing the liminal space for the first time. The Institute had believed that they had found a solution for storage and housing needs, and was granted funding by the US government to continue their research, which would go on to evolve into its own entity, being called Async, with Ivan Beck acting as vice president. Async by 1988 had conducted its third test into the project for KV31. Ultimately, this third test was another failure, as it was having a hard time recreating the results of the prototype test 6 years prior. Luckily for Async, in October of 1989, they would go on to run their sixth test, albeit with a little hiccup as the engineers would go on to find an obstruction inside the machine. But even with that problem, it worked. But what exactly are the backrooms? After the successful test done by Async, they were able to create the threshold, which allows you to walk from our world into the liminal space, kind of acting like a doorway. For the most part, the backrooms mostly look like things from our world, but all completely empty. Its most notable appearance being the yellow wallpaper and the bright fluorescent lights. But that's not its only feature, as it holds multiple floors, consisting of pools and tunnels, and even full-on neighborhoods. At least it did on the surface. As the more Async began to venture into this space, the more unsettling it began to become. Random cabinets appearing where they shouldn't be, chairs and tables being stuck in the walls and the floors of some rooms, and hallways on the floor. In the May of 1990, Marvin, a researcher for Async, would be going on one of his many expeditions into the liminal space, where he would accidentally fall down one of the halls. During his experience being stuck on a floor that they haven't mapped out yet, he would hear a voice calling out for help. And this would alarm him, as the only way into the liminal space would be through the doorway that only Async has at the time. And while searching for this person trying to help him, he would come across a place that looked like someone has been sleeping there. But that's not the only thing he would find. Entering this home that he heard these cries for help coming from, he would run into an unknown entity, being over 6 feet tall and hiding behind a wall, mimicking a human's cry for help. And you would think, hey, after learning there's this unknown creature in this area that we're trying to make for public use, maybe we shouldn't, right? Nope. They just built a wall to block off that area. God, I love corporations. But even if they are able to handle this creature, is this place even safe? This isn't the only anomaly in the backrooms. As we will learn earlier in February that year, a researcher named Peter would go on to have a bizarre experience of his own. While in the liminal space with his team, he would go on to hear a crowd of voices coming from a room. When he turns around to ask his team if they're hearing these voices too, he would go on to see them all disappear in a bright flash of light. This sends Marvin into a panic, trying to figure out what the hell just happened. He tries to make his way back to the doorway, but when he gets back, everything had completely changed. Where once it used to be just a simple door, a laboratory is taking its place. and Marvin, in the process of going in, accidentally triggered their alarm system. This will be our first experience with no clipping. As we have come to learn, Peter has been missing for over 3 months and was declared dead. But for him, it had only been 2 hours. And now that our plane and the Backrooms have been connected, the results have begun to spill out into our world as well, as Peter isn't the only one to experience the snow clipping effect. In 1991, Nicholas, a teenager, will be filming a movie with his group of friends. As they were about to wrap up their last shots, Nicholas would trip and no clip into the back room. In his daze, he gets up and tries to explore, trying to figure out where he's gone. There, he finds drawings on the wall, telling him to stay still and to not move at all. And instead of, following the directions, he decides to keep exploring, where he ultimately runs into the entity. He runs and tries to find a place to hide, and just as he's about to go down one of these inverted hallways, he gets grabbed by the entity. Dropping his camera, it falls down the hallway, where it no clips back into the real world, over 300 feet in the air where it falls to the ground. So in hindsight, maybe it was a good thing he didn't go down that hallway. At this point, it's safe to say that ASIC knows by opening the threshold, they're causing our universe to glitch, to innocent people ending up there through these null zones, being described as areas in our world where the border between ours and the liminal space is at its weakest. And with this, the number of missing persons cases skyrocketing after 1988, which was the same year that Async was successfully able to open up the threshold. And it seems that these null zones are growing, as seen in another found footage where a girl discovers one in her basement as she's seen chucking items through it, eventually causing her to accidentally no-clip. And these null zones could appear anywhere, as seen from a highway camera. A car would accidentally get no-clipped, later being found by that same girl being crashed into one of the backrooms walls. Toddlers, teens, cars, no one's safe from these null zones, as they appear randomly and seem to be spreading. And with all these people getting hurt and going missing, why would Async continue their research? The reason why Async won't stop Project KV31 is because we are fundamentally wrong about what Async is trying to achieve. We learned that the first experiment with the Backrooms took place in 1982 at Oak Ridge, but that wasn't our first encounter with the Backrooms. We learned through another found footage called Overflow that Ivan Beck first encountered the Backrooms during the Cold War, as we hear the broadcaster talking about a potential deal with the Soviets.
Our Lend-Lease debt for 25 years. The good faith which the Soviets would demonstrate by settling the debt would set the stage for a presidential order.
During this video, we explore Office, seemingly to have belonged to Ivan, as we see a paper signed off by him, before we get interrupted by a machine flashing an overload warning, before seeing the same crackling we did when the prototype ran its first test, witnessing the Backrooms duplicate the night sky. Ivan Beck is trying to go back in time, and this is supported when Async researchers find Nicholas's body in the Backrooms. During the February 5th, 1990 autopsy, it is revealed that he died 5 days prior to the research team finding him due to malnutrition, which shouldn't be fundamentally possible, as Nicholas no-clipped into the backroom in 1991, meaning when he no-clipped into the Backrooms, he also time-traveled to a year prior, which lines up with the experience that Peter had, as he accidentally no-clipped 3 months into the future, and would explain the voices that he heard. They weren't physical people there, but time-distorted conversations that people were having, and why the Backrooms are eerily empty, as they are places just frozen in time. And Ivan Beck is well aware of the time-traveling capabilities, as after they found Peter, Ivan tried to make sure nobody saw him, asking who was the staff present when Peter returned, and who all saw him come back, forcing Peter to stay there until he inevitably hit a breaking point, making him want to escape. Ivan doesn't care about improving the quality of life through the use of the Backrooms. Instead, he's trying to understand how the Backrooms work so he can manipulate time. And he doesn't care about how many lives it takes to do it. But if Ivan is only the vice president, why won't the head of Async stop him? And that's because there is no president of Async. The experiments began with Ivan, even before Async was a thing. Everyone answers to Ivan, and when anything goes wrong, they immediately inform him. Him being vice president is just a sham so he doesn't have to take on the personal responsibility for the atrocities that his company is causing, but allowing him to still maintain the power, since if anybody would need to speak with the president, they would have to go directly through him, and as a byproduct from the mess he gotten us into, the universe doesn't know what flow of time to follow, instead creating those null spaces that are inadvertently dragging innocent people in. And it's only getting worse as more people are increasingly disappearing, which explains why in the Backrooms there are items there that shouldn't be because they are being taken from different points in time in our reality. Ivan Beck has spent decades tearing holes in reality, not for science, not for progress, but for one's man obsession with undoing the past. And while he sits behind the safety of a title that means nothing, the null zones keep spreading, the missing person cases keep rising, and two worlds are starting to bleed into each other. We don't know what moment in time Ivan is trying to reach, but whatever it is, it's costing us everything. That's all I have for you for today. And if you would like to keep digging into the Backrooms with me, my Discord's link is pinned in the comments below. Like and subscribe, you already know it keeps you from no clipping. And until next time, don't no clip.